welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Modem Futura, our first live holiday special that we've done. So absolutely thrilled. And we're here set up in the lovely home of the Future of Being Human initiative in the Tempe campus.
Of Arizona State University, yes.
Here we are. So huge, first of all, big thank you for everyone in the live studio audience who managed to come out and join us today.
And you can make some noise at that point. And
that's right.
So everybody knows, there we are. Everybody knows you actually exist.
We literally feed off of your energy. So please don't hesitate to cheer, to jaunt. Maybe no booze, but I guess it depends on our answers. I don't know how this goes, but we're absolutely thrilled to be able to do this. The energy with live people is so much more fun than us just sitting in a small little room together talking. So that's awesome. I also want to spend a special thank you to our borrowed film producer, Jake Snyder. So Jacob, thank you for being here today and helping us out with all this stuff.
Because video is what you've got to have an audio podcast.
That's right. A podcast is not a podcast anymore without a YouTube video to accompany it or whatever. So we'll do our best there. But also we have a fun show lined up today that's a little bit different than usual. We've invited some special guests, which we'll introduce in just a moment. But we have this sort of fun game that we're going to be playing that will sort of randomly prompt us with questions that we have not really seen before. So it'll be kind of a guess as to what our topic of discussion is going to be.
And I'm actually going to see whether this works so you can see what this is like.
Yeah.
There we are. So this is actually the fifth guest here, our Vesta board, where it will randomly put up questions. And the idea is we're supposed to respond to these.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll take it. So you guys can get a sense of what kind of questions, and it goes every 5 minutes.
Every 5 minutes. Yes, you've got another 4 minutes, I think, for introductions.
Excellent. All right, so I'm just going to pause for a quick second, which is when we'll cue our introductory music, and then we'll get on with the introductions. All right, so I'm Sean Leahy, and I'm here with my festively dressed co-host,
Andrew Maynard.
And that means this is Modem Futura, the show that explores the intersection of technology and the possible, probable, and preferable futures, asking deep questions like, what will it mean to be human in the future? Mm-hmm. And today, as you can see, we're joined by a special guest. So first, I'll like to start by introducing Ruth Wylie. So Ruth is the co-director of the Center for Science and the Imagination here at ASU, where she is also associate research professor in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College and a senior global future scientist at the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. She pursues interdisciplinary translational research projects that leverage knowledge and insights from theory and laboratory studies to answer real-world problems, especially in the areas of educational technology, futures thinking, and applied imagination. So, Ruth, thank you for joining us, and thank you for coming back. This is your second time on the show already.
Thanks for having me.
So, clearly it was a good experience the first time because
we
were able to trick
completely.
you into coming back. Next, I'd like to introduce Bob Beard. Bob Beard is a Marine Corps veteran and double alumnus of ASU. As a public engagement strategist for the Center of Science and the Imagination, he produces multimedia content, public programming, exhibitions, and experiences at the intersection of science, engineering, and the humanities.
And this is just to put Sean on the spot to see how he responds when the festival goes.
With 2 decades of hands-on media experience, paired with his research in fandoms and other communities of practice, Bob's work focuses on creating spaces for intellectual curiosity, accessibility, and collaboration. Bob, welcome to the show.
You read the whole thing.
I read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. I got to do it right. And we're joined by Ed Finn over there in the corner, who will hopefully pop in for us and share some of his wisdom.
When the questions get really, really tough.
That's right.
That's
you're
when
sort
we
of
get to Ed.
you're sort of our ace we can go to. Ed, of course, is the founding director of the Center for Science and the Imagination at ASU, where he's an associate professor with a joint appointment in the School of the Future of Innovation and Society and the School of Arts, Media, and Engineering, and also serves as academic director of Future Tense, partnership between ASU, New America, and Slate Magazine, and the co-director of Emerge, an annual festival of art, ideas, and the future. As research and teaching explore digital narratives, creative collaboration, and the intersection of humanities, arts, and sciences. So, Ed, welcome.
Just think of me as your emotional support guest. I'm like the spare. Right. Yeah, in case something bad happens.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, a huge welcome to everybody. And I think this is going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah. So we should dive right in, seeing that the board is going to change in the next couple of minutes. So what's the first question? What will we value most in the future? we ought to have a board where we spin the needle and see who's going to answer. But I'm going to do that mentally, and I'm going to turn right to you. So okay, let's
Bob,
let's
welcome
make it
to the show.
Yes, trial by fire. Here we go.
But let's make it personal. What do you think you're going to value in the future?
Time. I'm thinking. I saw Interstellar in 70 millimeter yesterday, so I'm really taken by that line of like we need to treat time as a resource as much as we treat any other resource. And so what's the thing that we're lacking, and I think that things are getting encroached upon is that we just don't. Time's not our own anymore.
So here's the thing. Do you think technology is going to give us time back, or do you think it's going to suck time out of us?
Oh, no. I think it's like we've got to protect that bubble, right? It's like very kung fu. It's like, don't bring your claws into my time.
Keep your hands off my time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Well, it's about changing expectations. Like there's all this work that looks into how with technology, particularly at the home, and how and our expectations change of what it means to be clean. So, for example, like it used to take people all day to do the laundry.
Right.
So they would do it once a week or maybe once every other week. And so that set the expectation. I'm like, yeah, you would rewear these
Can I
things.
just say, I was at home doing the laundry yesterday, and it took me all day.
Yeah.
So I'm doing something wrong
Well,
here.
you still do it by hand with the right, like,
Yeah.
But
It felt like it.
when things change, that when technology is introduced, it often that it's promised with it's going to give us back all this time.
Right.
But really, it changes our expectations. Of what we want.
It's almost as if it gives us another bucket of time, which we just use as fast as anything. So we don't actually have the time we feel we need.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel that way too. I mean, it's like the promise is always there to be more efficient, be more, have all this time to free you up. We'll take away those responsibilities. But yet it seems like that doesn't happen. It seems like, where does that go then? If that is the case, like where is that time sort of vacuum coming? And I think I saw it's been being passed around, memeified, it's so forth on social media. But this idea of with all these new generative AI tools and stuff, I'm like, I don't want an AI tool to do the art and the writing and the creative fun stuff.
Yeah.
Like do my laundry instead. Like that would be.
But I'm going to bring it back to you then. So can you see that happening? I mean, something like AI, which supposedly is going to give us all this free time. Do you think it really will, or do you think we're just going to be pottering away on creating videos and whatever?
Oh yeah, no, I think there will be some other time suck.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to fill the void.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
The afternoon spent yesterday on Sora, for example, I'm not getting that time back.
Right.
So we're recording this just after OpenAI came out with their video generation package. Well, actually, you are going to get it back because you went through all of your free credits.
That's true.
Business. Yes.
Blew them all pretty.
So
quickly.
Sean, what do you think you're going to value in the future?
Yeah. Well, can I say time again?
No, you got to think of something else.
So
yes.
I mean, honestly, I think.
Saved by the bell.
Let's see. Okay, what's coming? So, new question on the Vestiboard.
Oh, I hope
Will
so.
kindness still be important in the future? Well, I'll just keep going with this one since I was already talking.
Yeah.
Not only do I think it will still be important, I think it might be of increased importance in the future.
No, carry on going. So this is the randomness of the draw.
Like, it didn't like my answer.
Stick with kindness. Yes. So kindness is going to be more important in the future.
And I think we can kind of blend these two. So
would a lab-grown person be a real person?
And you need to be kind to a person, whether they're naturally born or synthetically born through a laboratory. But no, I do think kindness, again, as we sort of continuously are pushing against just the real world situations of climate change, of all these kind of things, increased technological reliance, and we can fast forward depending on how far we talk about the future. We were talking in a previous episode about universal basic income because people don't have the need to go to work in some of these situations. Yeah. And so I do think an element of kindness will be increasingly important to understand that I think we're headed towards a shift in societal sort of webbings and strings, and without kindness, that is not a fun place to be.
But I'm interested. I'm coming back to you, Ruth, with the Center for Science and the Imagination, because of course you look at optimistic futures, but how does kindness feature in those? Because it sometimes feels as if we're living in a world where kindness is disappearing.
Oh, I hope not.
So do I.
I mean, I'm going to take all three of these questions for a second and see if I can do it before the
goes again.
Question flips.
Yep.
So when I think about values of the future, and this maybe isn't too shocking, but I don't think our values are going to change fundamentally. It depends on how long we're looking out. But I think the things that I value today fundamentally are going to be the same things that I value in 5, 10, and hopefully things I'm passing on to generations. So like how I use my time, a great value. I think the one I was going to bring up was my relationship with people. And I think that's highly connected to kindness and how we treat each other. And I'm not quite sure about lab-grown person, although I want to talk about this.
Would you be kind to a lab-grown
But
person?
this was going to go to. I wasn't going to go with a lab-grown person, but I was going to go to our AIs and our digital systems.
Yes.
And I actually
digitally grown people.
think
Possibly.
I think it's important to treat these devices with kindness to model how we want human. So I think it's nice to say please when I'm asking my Amazon device for something.
This is controversial.
Bob's got
actually.
something to
No,
jump in there.
I'm waiting for that update because ever since I've invited these things into my home, I will say please and I will say thank you. I also did it to model, for my children.
Right.
Yep.
But I'm waiting for the time where I thank Alexa, where I, get a result and I say thank you, and it's like no problem, Bob.
Sometimes
And that's
they
what it
do.
is.
Yeah, I think sometimes they do on a little bit of it. Not quite the like. I think
my
the-
ChatGPT is really polite to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the model, so for me, it's less about how maybe this digitally grown person is responding, but it's the modeling for the other humans in the space.
So I'm
Absolutely.
glad you said that, because that's very much how I feel. It's not about the machine or whatever the other thing is, but it's a reflection of who we are as humans and how we actually build society around us. But that actually seems to be quite unpopular. I talk to plenty of people who say you should never say thank you to a machine because it's just doing what it's been told to do.
I do think that it's important to make more clear when we're talking to machines and people. So we have changed in our family. We've changed the keywords, the wake words, to not be Alexa, but to be Ziggy. That's one of the choices. To make it more clear.
I'm so glad you said that, because all of the listeners who've got Alexas are now saying, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Now,
I know. That you're welcome, everyone. But that I do
Subscribe
think it's
to Modem
helpful to
Futura.
make it more clear about who we're talking to. And I don't know why though, but I mean, I feel like that's important.
So do you think things will change if we ever do have lab-grown people? And if this ever happens, actually, I think it's plausible, but probably not for the next 50 or 100 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that we'll be tempted to treat them differently? Or do you think that we're actually in training at the moment with AI for when we get these lab-grown people?
I'm going to phone a friend and bring Ed in on this one.
Lean forward, Ed.
How different is a quote unquote lab grown person from a person, some in vitro fertilization, all these different techniques we use to support people in having children, things that, and the continuing evolution of all those techniques, right, that might happen in the future. Humans are really creative at coming up with reasons to discount the humanity of other humans.
Yes.
And so I think rather than looking for more ways to draw lines and other people, I think if you start from a premise like, oh, maybe we can all be together, that's a better place to be.
Yes. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, I think. Yeah.
And I think it's going to be, picking up on what Ed's saying, it's going to be less about just starting with the lab-grown person, but it's going to be this person has, 5% of lab-grown parts and 10% of lab-grown parts.
Right.
And I will gladly turn over. The answer to that is yes.
Okay. Yeah. So for those that are listening, it flashed up as the answer 42, and then very quickly moved on before we could actually give a response to that.
Oh, this is a timely one.
Yes.
Will AIs one day replace politicians?
I have a
and
response
will we be kind to
this.
them?
Yeah, you're right. Please, Ed.
Politicians are already artificial intelligences. They have been forever because they are just the mouthpieces for complex organizations and systems with hundreds or thousands or millions of people.
Oh.
And anytime a politician is standing up on stage, think of all the people who gave that person words to speak and the things to think about.
Politicians were ChatGPT before ChatGPT was a thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Corporations are the original AIs.
Very interesting. Yeah. I'm going to have to process that. I'm not sure that I agree with that, but I love the idea that they're just sort of the sort of pinnacle of some sort of social system reflecting what happens underneath.
Yeah, no, I love that actually. I'm
well,
sort of
actually,
taken
I'm not
back.
sure
I'm
I
like,
do looking at the world today. I mean, I want something different.
I know. I mean, there's been, the story of the Manchurian Candidate has been a story like well told, right? Where you could control, but it is interesting that oftentimes that politician acts as exactly that. It is the regurgitation of all of its training data, whatever that might be, whether that's a position or the needs of the people it's supposed to be, right? The needs of its electorate. But but
I'm going to take this in a different direction. So okay, putting aside the idea that the politicians are just human AIs, and look at the dysfunction of humans. So we know that humans in power very occasionally tend to abuse that power, tend to believe weird things and impose them on others, tend to undermine the rights of others. Surely we're at an age now where a machine could do a better job than messy humans. I don't know. Ruth, what do you think?
Oh man!
I remember these answers are binding. So.
Oh yeah,
they go on the record.
I want to go back to my computer science training and say that we can't just blame or credit the product. That it's about the people that are building these products.
Okay.
And so I think that and how are we defining better, right? Like, so I think this is really academic answer. It's a way, because really I have no idea, Andrew, but I'm just going to start questioning the question.
You can answer the question you wish you were asked.
But I think
Go back to kindness.
I'll try to do it kindly. But I do believe in that it's about how are we defining better? And I think that's actually really important because as we look at how do we create better politicians, like if we just go there, well, for which groups? And and part of it is if we could agree on that as a society, then I think it doesn't matter to me if they're AI or
not. Yes.
But that's the thing that I think is the hard question is how do we decide as a group what's better? Because we see that we, again, as a society have very different definitions of that. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the polarization.
I think
that's
very right. I am going to throw a wrench in the works there, though. And Bob, this is a wrench for you.
Oh boy.
So one of the things I find interesting, we talk about democracy and democratic processes and decision making as something we aspire to, even though it's not great. I mean, the quote about it being the best thing we've got. The trouble is, democracy was created or imagined in a world that didn't have 8 billion people in it.
Yeah.
So then the question is, does democracy still work in a world that's this big? Can we live in a world where everybody has some sort of input into decision making? I mean, if not, and nobody likes the idea of a dictator, but what if we had a benign machine making decisions?
Oh, that is not a question I was prepared for. I was just here. I was just here to talk about H.G. Wells. I thought that's what we were doing.
Right.
Well, you clearly know our show, and H.G. Wells is always welcome.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got a good 15 minutes.
Right.
All right. That's a nested question.
It is. Yeah. To unpack whichever part of the nest you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think democracy in its form was, to represent small little contingents of folks, and it wasn't supposed to be this global operation.
Right.
I don't know how to. Oh, thank goodness!
Saved by the board.
Okay, putting politicians to one side. What do we have next?
It didn't.
We've got to kindness again. Will kindness still be important?
It's truly random.
Well, that just proves it. Yes. Okay, I'm going to override this.
Oh, look at that. He's got the power.
And I'm going to use my prerogative to choose something different.
All right.
Because we already know that kindness is good.
Well, I guess it also iterates the importance of kindness no matter what.
Yes. Yeah. So, what is the future? I'm going to go back to you, Bob. What is the future of humor?
This is more in my wheelhouse. Here we go. The future of humor, I come back to sort of like the AIs, right? And this is what I want to see. Like, I am fascinated by the way that these AIs have a lens on the world and sort of like the absurdity, right? And what was that? What was that very first AI generated movie with the kid from Silicon Valley? Do you remember
Tron?
This? No, this is
much older than
Stars.
Yeah, or
I'm gonna phone a friend.
Yeah,
keep talking. I'll back it up here.
Sunrise or something like that, and And what I was taken with, and the interesting conversation at the time was like, oh, this is not very good. It's like a kindergartner wrote it, or like a preschooler wrote it, and it's like, well, yeah, because this is at this sort of like dawn of this, and so. But if you carry it forward and you think about this like skewed non-human perspective on the world, like how absurd will it become? True. And that's the thing that I'm fascinated by. Like I'm fascinated by AI art where it's like it's not quite there, but there's something compelling about it. And I think that's what humor is. Like humor is on its unexpectedness, right? It's surprise.
So I think you're the first person that I've heard to say that, but it's so real. If you think of humor as being the unexpected, the different, the thing that jolts you and gets you to think in different ways, that's what AI has been doing with hallucinations and with these weird images.
Yes.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
No, and it's about surprise and delight. And this is why we're taken by, other comedians, because it's like, oh, they just have like just this off sort of this
way
skewed,
of seeing things.
This skewed way of seeing the mundane. And I would I'll sign me up for the first
having a great laugh, just sort of watching us.
Sign me up for the first like AI at the Improv. Like I'm into it. Like, yes.
So I Googled this as you were talking. 2016.
Yeah.
Sunspring.
Sunspring, yes.
But 2016. Like,
that's a while back.
And so it was an AI generated script. And then
it was acted out by humans. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Human actors did it. And same thing. It's like watching it and I just felt like, am I missing something? Is this like, could this be some avant-garde art performance that I just haven't studied enough art history for?
But I think things have just gone forward enormously since then. You look at what even this week's version of AI models can do. It's mind-blowing. But this test of humor, again, I don't know whether anybody has seen anybody doing this. I mean, we've got all of these benchmark tests for what AIs can do and how close they're getting to being human. I'm not sure I've seen humor in that list.
Well,
can you make me laugh? Can you say something funny?
Yeah. So I kind of took it a different way. Well, one, I feel like I can't remember where I heard it, but that, I think it was from a stand-up comedian, right? That the comedy is trauma and time, right? And so when I was thinking about the future of humor, I was thinking it more, not that the AI or like a generative AI tool would actually be generating something that I find humorous, but more to understand what I do find humorous and giving me just feeding me those things from wherever they could be. I mean, maybe sometimes they'd be artificially generated, but also just, what are the things that make Sean laugh? And give me those. And that way I could dial up something. It was more of like a, personal feed of funny stuff.
Right. Very interesting. But even just saying that, you obviously feel there is a future of humor. And I actually wanted to bring this back to what makes us human. Would you all agree that humor is something that almost defines our humanity? Or is that going too far?
Who do animals have to joke with each other? Like there's got to
they pull each other's tails, literally.
Well, there's the whales that wear the salmon on the head, right? Come on, that's like funny.
Hold it. So is this a real thing?
This is a real thing. Yeah, there was.
You haven't just been watching some sort of video generated by Sora with a salmon in there.
Apparently, marine biologists are seeing that whales will do like mimetics.
Strange things.
They'll do trends, and so like the case in the summer when all the whales were upending small boats.
Right. Yes.
Like this was just like it was for kicks, right? And so like I think animals do have a sense of humor.
Okay, so there's definitely a future in humor.
Can I ask my own question?
Yes, please. Yes. Let's totally ignore this. Yes.
I kind of but this is picking up a conversation that Ed and Bob and I were having earlier this week. And it gets to the like AI pitching, like tell me a joke.
Yes.
What is the Turing test that I can use now or in the future to figure out if I'm talking to a human or I'm talking to a really great digital avatar?
Yeah.
Is it tell me a joke?
I don't think it is because AI now is sort of mining sort of human knowledge.
And here's an example. I'm not a joke person. So if you tell me a joke, I mean, I'm going to come up, it's probably going to be just as bad. It's going to be an awful dad joke, something that I can't,
I think I have one joke in my repertoire.
But this is what I mean. So what is the question I can ask to figure out if I am talking to a really advanced AI or an actual human?
See, I don't know, Paul.
That is the future of being human.
Yeah. It's almost worth asking the crowd here. So somebody shout out if you think that you know what the question is. We need to ask an AI.
Will it matter? I mean, will AI conscious enough to have its own life form.
Okay, will it matter? So you're saying sort of if AI isn't alive, maybe it won't matter. But if it has some sort of awareness, what is the question we would ask? And anybody else got any? What would you ask an AI to prove whether it was human or not? Tell me something funny from your childhood. Actually, what was your first? Oh, okay. Now you're getting into
that's
what was your first grade teacher like?
Of course, but theoretically, right? It would just make it up. My first grade teacher was very warm, kind, and lovely with a mean streak.
Okay, AI. Yep, I've spotted it. but you're right. It's asking questions that are personal, I think, and where you get an intuitive sense of whether that feels true or right or not. But the point at which AI begins to emulate things so closely that you can't even tell that. Yeah.
And it is a good question. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think we're presupposing that it does, right? So that's the task, is how do we figure out humans from AIs?
Yeah.
What is the question or the type of question?
But it almost feels like conversations around the simulation hypothesis, where you say, well, if you get to the point where you just can't tell
what's the difference?
Does it matter?
Yeah.
Very
true.
Do you want to go on to the next question?
Well,
really
I'm
quickly?
looking at. I actually like this one.
Okay.
So could we one day create plants that talk, which is quite interesting. And I would even submit, I'm like, plants already can talk. If you say talk, they can communicate.
Yeah.
Right. And
we
do
just really slowly.
If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, that's great.
Right.
A little tree beard. But I mean, in many ways, a lot of plants already can communicate. But I would say you could even extrapolate that to other living creatures on this planet that communicate, other animals and things.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have the ability to understand them.
Yeah.
And so I think that could be a really fascinating sort of way of trying to taking those signals, those communications, and being able to interpret them in a way that sort of makes sense. Or this interspecies babblefish, if you will.
Right.
You know.
So, this does come back to AI, because this idea that you can have an AI translator. So we haven't got any live plants in here. We've only got artificial plants, which probably don't talk. But you go outside, and
if we did, they'd all say, "You're killing me," because they wouldn't survive.
They just go plastic. No, you go outside. Is it possible to have an AI translator that watches a plant and actually tells you sort of both what it's thinking and sort of how it's talking to others? Is that even feasible?
Yeah.
Or are we in
crazy? I think honestly, even today, you could get a first step of that, of just quantifying parts of the plant, right? So is it too dry? And then, those signals being saying like, I'm thirsty, you need to feed, don't forget to.
So you got to get your plant mindset.
Yeah. And so, I think a first layer would be that sort of rudimentary, like not maybe, what you wouldn't be able to necessarily have a conversation, but it would be able to signal in natural language that you would understand, as opposed to like, does that thing look dead? But to be able to get those warnings ahead of time, and I think that could be something that would be.
Well, this idea of like creating plants that can talk and like taking the word create out of it, right?
Sure.
Because plants are, if you believe the sort of Michael Pollan way of thinking about it, it's like plants are smarter than us, right? They've domesticated us, right? We carry on their progeny.
Right. They just don't do anything. So actually, I've got to say this. Have either of you read Day of the Triffids, John Wyndham?
I know the movie.
So this is one of the things under the character there says. You've got these sort of plants that sort of kill people and eat them. But they say, plants have domesticated us. They sit around doing nothing all day, and it's the humans that run around keeping
That's right.
alive.
Yeah. I want to keep cooking on this really quickly.
Do,
But like, so the idea of like plant communication, like we know that plants respond to music, right? Like you keep your music on. There's actually like a really great album, and one of the people in the audience is going to know this too. Probably the only person that I've met that knows this album. But in the 70s, there's this whole beautiful electronic music album that was created for you to just put on for your plants while you're away, right? And so I don't think we're that far away from communicating with plants, because they already have this appreciation and respond to music. So.
Yeah. So the one thing that does intrigue me here is timescales. So you have how long do the longest sort of trees last? It's thousands of years.
Yeah, I'm thinking like what would be like the redwood trees, like would those be
like
sort of the longest.
So
gigantic
imagine the sort of conversations that last years rather than minutes.
It takes me back to some conversations with Jonathan Keats around the time difference of when things work at the century scale, that's a lot different. But knowing that plants, depending on, I mean, I think there's been some fascinating research recently with large forest networks being able to respond sort of globally to environmental threats or like disease or things like that. You know, which is
okay. So we've got to scale up now. So we looked at individual plants. Can we listen to the whole planet? Could we have a planetary translator? Or is that just getting too crazy? And it actually gets back to the theory of Gaia, which Gaia was a theory that anthropomorphized the Earth. It doesn't really say that the Earth is sort of alive and speaking, but you have that sense of a sort of multi-organism that actually has a language.
Sure.
Fungus.
Yeah. Fungi. Oh, yes. Fungi.
Yeah.
I think that there's a whole school of thought that we used to pay a lot more attention to the planet and the natural systems that we live with, and that people did believe in a very pragmatic way that the forest was talking to you.
Right.
The river had things to say.
Yep.
You know, the ancient Egyptians were paying a lot of attention to what the Nile was saying. And sometimes there is a religious or mystical element to that. There's a god or an anthropomorphized version of it. But sometimes it's just like, no, you need to pay attention to what the woods are telling you, because otherwise you're going to starve. You know,
right. Yes. You've got that relationship with them. Yes.
And so it may just be a question of paying attention. But I think we could use AI. We've developed this whole global network of sensors and computation, and we could be using that to pay attention, to count all of these natural systems in a way that for the past 500 years through the Enlightenment, we've been discounting all of that. Saying, oh, it's not important, or that's in our way. We're going to bulldoze it so we can build another parking lot. And it's
got serious really fast.
Yeah, well, and finally coming back around to the idea that we actually do have to pay attention to, and just because it might be harder to count, maybe we still need to try to measure it, engage with it, see it as a form of communication.
Which I totally agree. But it's amazing that we're beginning to get to the point where we can use technology to do that. But I am going to put a note of caution in there, building on what you said, Ed. I think you rightly said that as a society, we've had that ability in the past and we've lost it. And now we're thinking that technology is the solution to recreating something we've lost. Why don't we just go back and sort of start doing what we did in the past?
Exactly, right? We're holding up the smartphone screen between ourselves and the world yet again.
It's going back to, is this plant dead or not? Instead of just looking at it as we did in the past, we now have to have a smartphone to tell us whether it's dead. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting too, Ed, because I mean, that's one of those sort of challenges that we face right now too with increasing technologies, is that driving isolation away from each other and also just nature, things that we're more traditionally accustomed to, and then there is in some sense there's an irony there of being like, well, we'll just turn to more technology to rectify that isolation. Would that work? I don't know. But it is. I do think that's a danger of leaning into the technology first as a replacement in some ways, because I do think that creates that layer of isolation. Which, you know, as human beings, which we've lived predominantly on this planet without digital technologies, that we're attuned and to pay attention to the trees when the leaves start changing and the weather, there's all these indicators of how things are, the seasons and how things are going and stuff like that. So it's interesting to, is that going to bring us back, or is it going to isolate us even further from?
You're right. It's the double or nothing theory of technology that says we've created all these problems with technology, therefore we've got to double down and create more technology to deal with the problems.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard the vestibule going again. Will the future of transportation affect tourism? That's a bit of a serious.
Nicely connects to the previous question that we didn't get to, which is how will drones affect the future?
Yes.
And I think that they're highly overlap. Like I enjoyed listening to your podcast episode on Waymo.
Yeah, great plug.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, and I look forward to when, if I'm really running late, I can just have the drone come pick me up in my little singular and helicopter me here. Right. Especially given
I have visions of the claw coming down.
Yeah, I'm thinking a little Ruth Wylie that just comes down on a wire and
just
the claw.
Up, folks. Sign me up. I am there.
Just drag through the air.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not getting on the claw.
See, I am on the claw. Like, if I don't have to drive in Phoenix traffic, I'll do just about anything, including letting a drone bring me to campus. Yeah. But I think that there's a lot of this. I think there's not only the future of transportation in terms of how we are getting to places and within cities, but I think that it also changes, like, if we think about VR and other types of experiences to replace the physical travel.
Yes.
On one hand,
Yep.
that feels really sad to me. Like there's something
Yeah.
about that tangible aspect of it. But on the other hand, I think it could be fascinating to put on my VR headset, figure out a way to get authentic Thai food delivered to my house
That's
and like
right.
walk through the streets of Bangkok and have that experience on a Tuesday afternoon.
I have to tell you, Ruth, I love this vision, but as an avid user of the Apple Vision Pro, I can tell you that finding where your mouth is when you're wearing the headset is a nightmare. So I now have visions of you with your chopsticks and Thai food, sort of with stuff everywhere.
But
but
as
in
long
your
as they
mouth.
wipe off easily,
Yeah,
right?
this will all be addressed in future
Right,
iterations.
right.
But what I'm getting at is that I think that going back again, I love just trying to draw a thread across all these questions.
Yes.
And I think that valuing human connections and valuing kindness and valuing these type of authentic experiences.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of travel allows that to both build empathy for our own neighbors and culture by experiencing other cultures.
Yes. Yep.
So, but it's also limited to the few that can afford it because of the time and costs and carbon
Sure.
with it. So it's really interesting to think about what future technologies
Yep.
can affect tourism and how we can play with that to broaden those experiences.
So I've got to build on that with something that I've talked about a lot with a good friend of mine and a student with VR. And this is something that you see in sci-fi movies, but it's the idea that maybe you could have cafes that are identically laid out, opposite sides of the world, and you walk in there and you put your VR headset on and you're in an international cafe. So someone in Japan can be sitting on one side of the table, you can be sitting on the other, and you can be engaging as if you're there. It's just that the thing that is connecting you is those VR headsets and the electrons going through. And because the layout is identical, you can maneuver around these spaces. That, I think, would be an incredible digital way of traveling where it feels like you're there. You've got that connection, you've got that community, but you don't leave the physical space that you're in.
Andrew, I have to smile because I'm immediately brought back to, like, there's one flaw in that, and that is the humans, because I'm instantly reminded of, what is it called? The portal that they put it was this
Yes.
large video screen between New York City and Dublin, Ireland.
yes.
And immediately it had to be shut down because of the amount of lewd, like, moonings and
stripping
like,
and-
like just people be,
But isn't that amazing? You can strip in Dublin and people can watch you in New York in
and
real
I guess
time.
it's one of those things, right, where you're like,
isn't technology wonderful?
well, that is. And to some extent, you're like, well, both New York and Dublin, if you've spent time in either, you're likely to see that anyway. So it kind of is the true form of,
Okay, yes.
the good and the bad come with
Yes.
that. But
Yeah.
that just made me chuckle because it's like, of course, the minute you would have that ability, of course, that
Somebody's
behavior is
find a
going
way
to
of-
come through.
Well, actually, there has got to be some connection with humor in here somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
I believe, yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I think the true test of, like, AI humor is, like, if it's going to tell a poop joke because, like, it doesn't poop, right?
Right.
So, like, that's how we know is if it's, like,
What would the
scatological.
equivalent be? Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe that is the test of
There it
whether
is.
it's
Yeah.
I
human
knew
or
we'd get
there we
there.
are.
I knew we'd get
The
there.
vacuum of a conversation, or that true question, that true question is like,
Yes.
what's the potty humor here? Because
So,
no
right.
dinner conversation is complete without potty humor at some level.
So this
I
is
feel
why
like.
embodied AI is so important. Yes. Okay, moving on from poop jokes.
Yeah, what do we
have
get here?
next? Oh goodness me, this is getting more and more serious.
Oh,
will,
yeah.
will universities be redundant in the future? Hell yeah.
as we sit here in so this will be interesting. I'm curious, Ruth and Bob and Ed, what you're. So I'm going to say, like, parts, absolutely, and I think it's going to depend on, as we move into the future, again, what part of university is redundant. I think now the question will be for this, like, the longevity is how to pivot away from just traditional, you come here to get this knowledge that's been locked away in a box. This is where you get it. From this point on, you can go forward. That redundant, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the question really, I think, is this pivots into a different question: is what would the value add become when the knowledge or information itself is ubiquitous and
That's right.
freely available anywhere and everywhere.
So I have a great friend, Mark Daly, who wrote recently about a future where knowledge is free.
Yeah.
Or intelligence is free, I think was his phrase. And he made the point that universities are based on a model where intelligence is in scarcity.
Right.
So you have to have these institutions that sort of protect it and nurture it. But when everybody has access to an incredibly intelligent AI, intelligence is effectively free. So what's the point of these universities that try and sort of protect that scarcity model?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then, to that point, right, then that scarcity becomes what you pay for, is the access to exactly that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do with Modem Futura. We're giving it away for free. Now, whether you find it intelligent or not is a different story.
Yes,
Regardless,
giving
we're
something away for free. Yes, Ed.
I think that universities are not really about that. I think they're actually about community, and they're about culture.
And we should say that you're speaking from ASU, which has sort of bucked the trend of conventional universities.
Well, but this is so some places do this better than others.
Yeah.
And I realized this, when you move around, you realize, some places have a real culture. People identify as being part of that culture, and they come back later. They feel a tie as an alumni or alumnus or something. But that is why I don't think universities will go away, because I think that this ties back to the question, how can you tell whether you're talking to an AI? When you talk to your roommate in college and they say something incredibly weird, and it takes 3 follow-up questions just to figure out what they're even trying to communicate to you. All of those deeply human experiences and meeting people who have radically different perspectives or are just thinking about different stuff, and they're taking classes and you don't even know what the field is that this class is a part of. That's part of what makes universities interesting, and what the community part of it is. And the community's ultimately, I think, about curiosity.
Yeah.
And this idea of learning, which is a fundamentally hopeful activity.
But from that, I know the answer to this because I know you, but pretending I didn't, that doesn't sound like a scarcity model. That sounds like a university for everybody.
Yeah. The reason that universities are premised on a scarcity model now is more about capitalism and real estate and housing and the food plan in a dining hall.
The food plan.
All of the things that make it expensive to be here.
Yep.
And ultimately maybe the most expensive resource, time, right?
Yeah.
And that's the incredible thing about going to a college, going to a university, is to have all of this freedom in how you spend your time for a certain number of years, and getting to make these choices about what you do and what you study. And hopefully not spending all of that time just eating Cheetos and playing video games, but actually learning how to
Going
be more
to an
curious,
occasional class,
learning how to learn, right?
Yep.
And so all of those things, I don't think it should be a scarcity model.
So let me ask, and I'm going to open this up to all of the rest of you. I actually really buy into that model. But is it possible in the future that people will get that somewhere else other than a university?
Sure, because communities can exist anywhere. But I think there's something about and I don't know that one of the problems with the university, certainly the standard model, is that it's really a hierarchical structure,
right?
Like this weird medieval structure. There are magic robes. It's very strange. But I don't know that you actually need that. You can have a much more peer-centric community of learning, and I think the most fun part of university experience is when you get people to let go of the hierarchy, hang out together.
Yep.
So, I think that's what we, should be working towards, and I don't think it has to exist only in. It could be called something else entirely.
Right. I think that's where it gets really interesting when you think about the concept, but you don't necessarily sort of force it into a conventional structure of a university. Yeah, I see you smiling there, Ruth.
Well, I'm
kindness is
laughing
back
because our kindness question is back. Really
need to pay attention.
It's weighted apparently.
Which I love this question. Don't get me wrong.
So for those of you listening, again, we have, will kindness still be important in the future?
This the third time?
This
Third time?
Vesta board, third time, yes, this Vesta board desperately wants us to.
I think this is actually a secret research project that you're running. And we did the pre-test where we were asked this in the beginning, we were asked in the middle, and now this is like the post-test to see if our answers changed as a result of us all. Like in the beginning, I was like, yes, kindness will still be important. Right now, I'm like, I'm not so sure.
Ask me one more time, and it is not.
Who knows,
It's definitely
right?
not. Yes. But actually, I am going to tie this back into the conversation about community and universities. So to me, one part of community is definitely sort of learning to listen to others and respond to others. And kindness surely has got to be part of that. I mean, people often talk about empathy as well, but kindness seems to be an act which is critically important to community. So we could ask sort of, if we're talking about universities and learning and community in the future, what is the role of kindness there? Is it important that we think about kindness as core to how we build the future? And I'm hoping that there's going to be a trivial sort of question at the end of this, because I don't want to get this too deep before we actually sort of wrap up. But yes, Bob, how should we be thinking about kindness?
All right,
and community in the future.
I'm just going to defer to perhaps the best science fiction movie that was made in Arizona in 1988.
Okay.
Yeah. No, Sean, it's not Independence Day. No, I cannot stand for this. No, you know what? There's a line in the film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure that says, "Be excellent to each other." Mm-hmm. Right? That's it. Like the entire future is based off of those words. Just be excellent to each other. Just like just be a good human. So yeah, is kindness still important in the future? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Ruth.
Oh, I hope so. I was just kidding about changing my answer. For the future that I want to inhabit, and I want future generations to have it, if it's not important, then it gets really dark quickly.
Yeah.
If we say that, if we start to imagine what a world is like where kindness is not important, like I don't want to do it.
No, it seems to be so important.
Yeah. No, I'll just echo all of that. I think if kindness becomes a scarcity, that is so when we talk about futures all the time, right? We talk about the ones we want to get towards and the ones we want to stay away from. And a future where kindness is a scarcity is one we want to stay away from. But I think that question is a wonderful question to always resonate as we're talking about, new technological innovations or advancements, and asking those types of questions. Is this isolating us away from the practice of kindness, or how do we find ways to embody that and mediate that within? I mean, there's lots of mechanisms we can use for that,
and I think not losing sight of that, not getting so enamored with the technology that we forget what it is to be truly human.
Right. I mean, that's always the danger when it's the technology for the technology's sake, and then we lose sight or become isolated in many ways.
Yeah.
Even from ourselves, even from, your family unit, from your, the rings of community as they sort of broaden out, you can see how that isolation would have these knock-on effects. And yeah, you can be a curmudgeon in a lighthouse all by yourself, yelling at everybody, or shaking your fist at the clouds. But
and if you are, what you really need is more poop jokes, obviously. So I'm going to use my prerogative as co-host here to put up a final question, because I think we're probably getting to the top of the hour. So this will be the last one, which I have chosen, and we'll see how this goes.
Waiting and
gotta wait for it.
It's a longer one.
Nerves and excitement before reading each of these questions.
Oh, this is a good one.
Does the future need us? A nice one to wrap up with. Bob, does the future need us?
The future is going to happen regardless of us. Yes.
Okay. So future doesn't need us.
I mean, I'd like to.
Do we need the?
I'd like to be a part of it, but time marches on, right?
Yeah. Ruth.
Again, I just my academic is strong today because I'm like, what do we mean by the future? And do we mean
by
this is your world?
And the five of us or this whole room?
Yes.
I think and need, but I no. I mean, I think that the future doesn't need us.
This is why we need universities in the future, because otherwise who would ask questions like this?
But does the future need us? No, but I think that I want to imagine a future where humans are still a part of it. So at the quintessential basic elements, no, in fact, the world would probably be a lot better without humans. So it doesn't, when I think of the future, it's like the future of the earth. Does it need us? No. But I think
it would
that's
be
also
nice
depressing.
if we were a part of it. Yes.
Yeah. And so I want to figure out a way where we have a future where the earth and humans and animals where it does feel like we need each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think really where, going back to the conversations and the themes around community, I want a future where we really feel and believe that we need each other.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I need all of you in this room to have the futures that I want.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Ed.
Yeah, I think the future, while there is a sort of entropy and the causality and the universe going forward version of it, really the future is just something we made up. It's our invention, and we need it. We invented it because we need it. We need a way to think about what could happen as a parallel to the other space of imagination, the past, the things that we think happened in the past. And some of that's because the present can be hard and stressful or boring or just confusing. And so we reach backwards and we reach forwards to try to grapple with what's happening now, and also invent the people we want to be in the past and the future.
So interesting you went that way, and it shows there are so many different ways of passing this question out. But at the beginning, I tried the almost sort of flipped it around, said do we need the future, which of course makes no sense until you start thinking about the future as something we construct in our minds, and it becomes part of us, how we think about the future, how we think about our pathways there. In that sense, yes, I'm with you. We absolutely do need the future. Otherwise, what are we doing? Where are we going? We've got to invent something that we're moving toward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that creates this, right? I was thinking about, do we need a future? And it was like, no. I'm like, that is a sad, like cold, I mean, if you go far enough out in the future, yeah, of course, the universe will end in ice, not in fire, and all that's, a sad tale. But to that end, like the future, we need the future. For that exact reason, because we're geared towards thinking about what's next, or for whom. We're doing this for the future in some ways, whether that's personal or for family or whatever. But it's the hope of, and as humans, we always think this way. I mean, it's the hope of what's tomorrow. It's the hope of, we were talking a previous time about that drive for exploration. Those are not things you do for without a future. Like those are all part of advancing and moving and going towards this imaginative space that we keep creating for our, again, even individually or societally, we create these spaces as the future. And and the decisions that we make today impact what we want or don't want to happen.
Yep. Which I think is a great place to end, thinking about sort of that connection with the futures we imagine, the futures we aspire to create.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We're coming to the end of a year, so we can start thinking about the future.
What comes
will
next?
2025
there
bring
we are.
us,
Yes. Yep.
And stuff like that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So this has been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you, our guests. The wonderful, bizarre, sort of random conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying yes to this in the first place.
I know. Our wonderful audience who can make more noise now to prove that you actually exist.
Excellent. Well, yeah. And again, thank you, Ruth and Bob and Ed, for joining us. We'll see next year on our next holiday episode if you'll come back. We'll see. You'll be in for this in 2025. We'll see. But thanks. I'll try to put as much information as we can on the stories we talked about and things like that in the show notes. But this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And thank you to our audience. And thank you, Jake, for joining us and running the camera the whole time. That's been fantastic. And
don't forget to listen and subscribe to
Modem
Futura.
Absolutely. Yeah. So from all of us at Modem Futura, we hope you have a wonderful end of the year. We'll see you on the next one.
See you.
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, everyone.
End transmission.